So the context keeps getting broader. Now we're looking at a much, not just this human scale, not just evolutionary scale, but geologic scale. That's the challenges in front of us. Now I want to bring it though back home, right back to this room, right back to the year 2011, and back to the question, what is actually in the minds of the people that we're hoping to talk to influence, to cooperate with, to make the kinds of changes that we're about. So it's my privilege to introduce the president of the James Beard Foundation, a friend and a colleague, Susan Ungaro.
Thanks, Joseph. And it's just a thrill to see so many interested, active thought leaders joining us for this two-day conference. Well, I'm delighted to introduce my partner in polling today, Susan Westmoreland. 10 years ago, she was actually named the James Beard Foundation Food Editor of the Year, and she was very involved for years with our awards committees. But that's kind of no surprise when you consider the fact that she manages Good Housekeeping's test kitchen. As food director, she oversees every recipe that appears in the magazine, which, by the way, you heard today is read by 1 out of 5 American women. Clearly, she knows about the tastes and the time pressures and just inside the mind of today's American women and how they are feeding themselves and their families. That's why she appears regularly on television. She's been on television shows that range from the Today Show to Good Morning America to Food Network and Cooking Channel. So please welcome Susan to give us a little insight into her readers and the typical American woman.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everybody. This is just such an exciting conference for me. I feel like my brain is expanding and contracting on a regular basis. I'm going to give you probably a lot of stats. Some of them you're going to be really excited about. Other ones are going to make you go, ugh. But I have more information if you want any. Some of it's not on me, but I can talk to you tomorrow. I will just start. As you heard from Miriam Aron, Good Housekeeping has been advocating for our reader in food, environmental, and health issues for over 100 years. In over a century, we've answered literally millions of letters noting those concerns. And for the past 50 years, we have been polling our readers. So we worked with Fairfield Research just this month. It ended on September 6th to get some kind of state of the moment on what they're thinking about regarding their eating habits and how these habits play out in their daily lives. So who are these women? They aren't living in New York City, and they probably aren't in our food community. This is a truly national sampling of women who are either subscribers, newsstand, or occasional readers of GH who answered a call on the web or in the magazine to be part of our panel, which is 20,000 strong. Let's see. The highest concentration of them are about 60% between 35 and 54. More than 3/4 have attended or graduated from college. Over half of them are employed. 2/3 of them own their own homes. Over 60% have children still living at home. And the median household income is just under $52,000. Our survey and the Beard Foundations, which Susan will present in a few minutes, have several points of intersection, and it probably won't surprise you that there will be divergence. So, from the voices of my 908 typical American women, how America eats. Can I have the next slide, please? Taste rules. When asked about factors considered when food shopping, more than 90% of respondents said taste is influential on purchasing packaged goods, and over 3/4 said it was very influential. Price was next at 90%, and 60% also called that very influential. And the next was brand trust. 86% said it was influential, and half called it very. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, what else influences their shopping? Well, this little roster here, I'm not going to read you every single one. I hope you can see it. But I just want you to note, from the top to the bottom, there is only a 14% point spread. So the locally grown purchasers, though last on this list, still there's a 60% influence. And I think this number has really grown in the past 3 years even. Locally grown claims were more influential among our 25 to 34-year-old readers, and these claims are less influential among 18 to 24. And I kind of wonder if what Fabio said earlier, if it's a question of money, they may not just have the money to do this. I don't know that it's lack of exposure or concern. Those living in the West had the highest interest in local foods, and lowest was in the South. Respondents with children rated locally grown claims more influential than those without. Can I have the next slide, please? And it's not always organic. Almost half of the panelists said that they buy organic fruits and vegetables at least occasionally, and nearly 20% buy them very often. And about a third said that they occasionally or often buy organic milk, poultry, eggs, and some packaged foods and cereals. So it looks like moms are making choices about buying organic by starting with what their family and kids eat most. Over 3/4 of our panel said that they rarely or never buy organic soda and other non-dairy beverages. And 60% occasionally or often shop at farm stands. Now, I looked back at some surveys from the 90s, and there was a survey in the late 80s that didn't even ask about farm stands. 94, I think, was the first time we asked, which is kind of interesting. Organic claims were rated as influential by more of the younger respondents. The cutoff was 44. The fewer respondents aged 45 and over saw this claim as influential on their purchases, which really was surprising to me. The Northeast and the West were the regions where organic claims were the most influential compared to the South and the Midwest. And not surprisingly, more respondents with children said organic claims influenced their packaged good purchases as well, and that was about 50%. Significantly, more respondents with children also said that natural claims influenced their packaged goods, and that was 60%. So this is, I think these numbers are actually encouraging. To me, they are. I know that they may not be to all of us, but to me they are. When asked how often they shop at green markets or farm stands, more respondents aged 35 and over said that they do. And regionally, more respondents in the Northeast and the Midwest said that they very often shop in those markets. Now, the South and the West lagged, which is really interesting to me, but I'm kind of wondering, in California, the grocery stores are so fabulous that maybe this is why it lagged. I was very surprised by that factor. Anyway, and my last claim on this slide, which is there, is that recycling packaging mattered the most to Northeasterners and also marginally more to people with children. Can I have the next slide, please? Who brings home the bacon? This is just a quick snapshot. You can see that it's still mostly women. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just want to say that you'll be shocked to know that most of these numbers haven't really changed in several decades, that it's still, the spouse partner is doing it 2%. This survey is over 95% women, so if I keep saying women, that's why. But I think the lost opportunity here is that only 10% say that they go shopping with their children, and I think there's a real disconnect in that opportunity to have kids see the markets, go to the farm stands, all of those things. Can I have the next slide, please? I call this the dinner dance. So when asked how often the family eats together in an average week, the good news to me was that the majority across every age group and region said 5 times a week or more. So my next question, of course, is, so how much of this food is really actually getting cooked at home? I'll get to that. This is actually a consistent number for GH since 1994, and as a big campaigner, as Susan knows, of family dinner, I think this is good news. Over 80% of the respondents told us that their family eats together 3 times a week or more, and over 60% said together 5 times a week. And interestingly, this was a stable number whether there were kids at home or not. So, people are having nice couple dinners too. Nearly 90% spend less than an hour cooking dinner at home each weekday. That is not a surprise. 29% spend 30 minutes or less, and about 10% spend more than an hour. At Good Housekeeping, we have this unwritten rule that all our weeknight dinners are 30 minutes prep or less. So you may be prepping something and roasting a chicken, it will take you longer, but our active time we try to keep under 30 minutes, and this is basically because of demand from the reader and good response about it. So how many of these dinners are cooked at home? 90% say that they're cooking dinner at home 3 times a week or more, and 62% say they actually are doing those 5 nights at home. 60% of women say that dinner is not planned ahead, which does echo this stat that kills me, that at 4 o'clock, over 70% of American women do not know what they're making for dinner. And almost a third of our readers, or these are not all our readers, but said that all of the meals are planned in advance and then cooked each day. I would venture to say that these families are probably saving money and eating more healthfully. And then we do have a stubborn 1% who never cook because they're either too busy, don't have time, or they just don't like to cook. All right, next slide, please. I have to get a drink of water, sorry. Fast foodation. Over half of the respondents eat fast food establishments once a month or less. Yes. A third eat there once a week. 13% said that they or their families eat fast food at least twice a week. 60% said the increasing number of healthy options at fast food chains make them more likely to eat healthfully. And 30% said that they know their children will eat more nutritiously. And this is presumably because the parent is going to be choosing that food for the young child. Because in the next breath they say, over half of them say that they know their child will still choose the less healthy options. A quarter of them say that since they're eating fast food, they are still going to choose the unhealthy option because if they're eating fast food, they might as well. And I know, really. On restaurant menus in general, over 40% of them are paying attention to the calorie counts that we've started showing. And they will choose a low-calorie option because of that. 1 in 5 don't pay any attention at all. And over a quarter of them pay attention and still order whatever they want anyway. I actually love some of these questions. So next slide, please. Healthy eating or not? Almost 70% said their family eats healthfully whenever possible. I think this is a really huge number for us, and just in terms of acknowledgement and awareness, and in this demographic financially too. 1 in 5 said they only do so when it's convenient. 8% said they eat healthfully all the time, and 6% said never. Slide 9. Next slide, please. Never. Okay, so what are the hurdles? Nearly 70% say that it's just too expensive. With this household income, there just aren't a lot of extra money for premium products. A third said that their family prefers not to eat healthfully. And nearly a third state that there isn't enough time. And another quarter say that they don't have time to read the nutrition label. So I guess, interestingly for them, that's where it starts, not within the produce aisle. Okay, next slide, please. Motivation. 2/3 say, and this is why they're eating, and this is what we talked about a lot in a couple of groups I was in. I feel like there's so much negative emphasis, and this is going to point that out again, and it's sad. 2/3 say that they're motivated by the fact that they will become or stay overweight. Over half are concerned that their family's health will suffer if they don't eat healthfully. 50% are concerned that their spouse will become or stay overweight. And again, nearly half are concerned that school meals are fattening and unhealthy. Over 40% worry about their children having an obesity problem. So this is the equation that we really want to turn around. Next slide, please. Okay, and here is another little area that needs a lot of work. Healthy eating, it's personal. Over 90% agree that healthy foods need to be more affordable and widely available. About 85% agree that schools should serve healthier food to children. Michelle Obama's Let's Move and Chef's Move, along with a lot of local programs, I think are starting to make inroads into this, but we have a long way to go. 83% agree that parents should set limits on junk food for their children. And nearly 80% agree that food corporations need to do more to ensure that they produce healthy foods. 3/4 agree that people should eat more locally grown food. And about 1/3 agree that the government should do more to ensure that food is healthier. Most of the issues where the panel wanted government intervention concerned children. Over half agreed that the government should do more to prevent junk food marketing to children. And as you see, school food was a major concern. But when asked about whether the government should be taxing soda, only 1/3 agreed. And when asked about the government ensuring that packaged foods are made healthier, only about 45% agreed, which I think is a small number considering what we're going through. So these women take their responsibility of providing healthy food for their families seriously and personally. They want some help from manufacturers and the government, but ultimately the response is that the responsibility and choice lies with them. I throw it to you, Susan, to talk about chefs. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. So our today's chefs, and we have some in the room here, and American women so very different. In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. And we surveyed just about 100 chefs, and to find out really what keeps them up at night, how they really feel about money and power and the media. And we got some surprising and I think also good, passionate answers. But before I get to the findings, just a little fact about the 100 chefs that we did survey. 2/3 of them run restaurants where the average check per person is between $25 and $75 per diner. 1/3 say their typical check per diner is $75 to $150, and the rest, about 7%, boast an average check of over $150 per diner. None worked in any restaurant where the check is below $25 per diner. So, not so surprisingly, our group of chefs are not working at fast food restaurants or low-priced food chains. Yet, it's interesting that when we asked them a question about profit margins, The majority of chefs, 72%, said that fast food restaurants have a higher profit margin than fine dining restaurants. But in fact, that's not really true. According to the National Restaurant Association 2010 survey, fast food restaurants, where the price per diner is $15 or less per person, have a pre-tax profit of 3%, while fine dining establishments have a pre-tax profit of double that, just 5.9% or 6%. So what happens when chefs are cooking at home in their own kitchens? Well, I have to tell you that they practice a lot of what we heard preached today. Chefs shop far more often at farmers markets, 65%, than the typical American woman, which you just heard. Well, and they say they shop, that's 65% of chefs shop very often at farmers markets, while only 17% of American women do. And probably because of the way chefs think and their practice and the way they feed their families, they're much less concerned about their families' waistlines and their families' future health. In fact, only 28% of chefs are worried about their children having an obesity problem, where you heard that 45% of Good Housekeeping readers did. And when it came to the role of government in our nation's diet, chefs are a lot more bullish than the typical American woman, which I think surprised me. I think of American women as being very activist. 80% of chefs believe the government should do more to prevent junk food marketing to children. Only 45% of women said yes to that, almost half. And half of chefs feel that government should tax sugary soft drinks and unhealthy food to decrease consumption and improve our nation's health, while only 1/4 of American women felt so. Slide. So what else is eating chefs? We asked them the top 10 issues that are very important for the future of food in America. And as you can see, taste, we've heard a lot about that today, came out number 1, followed by food safety. Sustainability came in number 4. Personal family budget issues, traceability, climate change, and global food prices were their least concern. Next. Money and power. Who has too much or too little? Here's what chefs had to say. 85% said large food corporations have too much power. Then 8 out of 10 said the government food policies need to be changed, or farmers should earn more money. I think a lot of farmers would like to hear that. Over half said the agricultural industry has too much power, and 39% said our food is too expensive. Yet only 5% said restaurants make too much money. Next. So when chefs are trying to start their own restaurant, what is a new restaurateur's biggest challenges? Well, the top 5 were obtaining financing, hiring staff, finding location, obtaining permits, and following regulations. But those are the 5 top issues if you're going to start a new restaurant today, according to our poll of chefs. Next. We've asked about the Wall Street factor. What are the 5 top items that stock market fluctuations have impacted? And interestingly, number 1 among these chefs in their restaurants was wine sales, client morale, average check, reservations, and food costs. But do chefs really have the power to influence change? And I think this is really very heartening to see that almost 70% of chefs and restaurateurs believe they have a responsibility to encourage and support healthy eating habits. I think we're seeing a lot more activism there among chefs from media and television and just in the news. 2/3 feel that chefs are at the forefront of food system change, so that's why it's exciting to have some chefs here today. And half say chefs have a lot to teach us about nutrition. Yet 89% of chefs don't support listing salt, calorie, and fat content on restaurant menus, which I thought was interesting. We've heard that, maybe your panel later on might get to that. Next slide. Chefs really care about children. I think this is just an incredibly heartening survey finding. Almost all of them say schools should serve healthier food to children. That was even more than the typical American woman and the mothers reading Good Housekeeping. Again, 90% or so say parents should set firm limits to stop their kids from eating junk food, and 8 out of 10 say the government should do more to prevent junk food marketing to children. But do the families of chefs actually eat better? I think the answer is yes. Almost all of them say their family eats healthfully always or whenever possible. 70% claim they buy organic dairy products, poultry, fruits and vegetables very often. Again, the same number felt nutrition is a personal responsibility, and 63%, as I mentioned before, shop at farmers markets. But what about their personal behaviors? We asked them that over the past 3 years, how their personal consumption of good food has increased. And as you can see, 8 out of 10 said they're consuming more local food. They've increased the amount of vegetables and fruits in their diet. They're buying more certified organics and sustainable. And unlike the majority of Americans, 2/3 almost are not concerned that their children will have an obesity problem. Next. We also asked about their concerns about sustainability in their restaurants and how that impacts them. And as you can see, just over 70% are highly concerned about sustaining profitability. That was their #1 concern, understandably. Next, food sourcing, followed by public health. Another stat was just about 40% were concerned about water and waste and energy sustainability issues. And in fact, 80% of our chefs that were surveyed served bottled water in their restaurants. Next. So does media affect your menu? And for those of you who are in the media in this room, it's interesting to see that the top 3 influencers in the news are natural disasters, news reports, and food TV trends. And the bottom 3 influencers are fad diets, advertising, and major political news. And finally, is the media the message for chefs? For all of us, I think it's interesting that chefs are probably not quite as influenced as the rest of the American public are by media reports. As you can see that the highest number newspaper food sections influence and affect chefs, that they're reading them and refer to them, followed by Facebook and magazines, food magazines, blogs, apps, industry trade magazines. Twitter, TV food programs only got 24%, yet interestingly, I thought, 77% of the chefs say that even though they're not influenced by television food programs, they actually do believe and know that their diners, their clients, are very much influenced by television. So now that I've given you some insights into the minds and lives of our chefs around the country, it's a perfect segue, I think, to the next panel of James Beard Award-winning chefs that we have that will be moderated by Mitchell. But first, we have another video. Thank you all.